Little did Frank Olson know, this day in 1953 would redraw the boundary between patriotism and horror. He was a scientist by training, an Army bacteriologist who had worked at Fort Detrick and been transferred into the secretive world of U.S. intelligence. Colleagues called him steady, loyal. His work fed a quiet, Cold War panic. Could an enemy break a man's mind, and could our own agencies build a tool to do the same? In the autumn of 1953, that question was no longer theoretical. It became a laboratory experiment. In November, Olson was summoned to a CIA gathering in New York. There, under the auspices of research into interrogation and behavioral control, he was dosed with LSD without his consent, one of hundreds of men used as unwitting subjects in a program later named MK-Ultra. The initial reaction was acute confusion and terror. Friends say he grew withdrawn, feverish with ideas that his life and work had consequences he had never imagined. A little over a week later, on November 28th, he fell from a 13th floor window of a Manhattan hotel. The official line at first was suicide. Friends and family could not accept it. In the decades that followed, fragments of truth dribbled into the light. Congressional inquiries in 1975, the Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission, revealed that the CIA had, beginning in 1953, sponsored a sprawling program of mind control experiments. LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, electroshock, and experiments carried out through cutouts and contractors. Doctors, prisoners, patients, and civilians were used. Many never gave informed consent. MK-Ultra was not a single lab. It was a network. In Montreal, Dr. Ewan Cameron at McGill's Allen Memorial Institute pioneered deep patterning and psychic driving, long drug-induced comas, repeated taped messages, and brutal electroconvulsive therapy, techniques funded covertly by CIA money routed through front organizations in San Francisco and New York. Safe houses run under what operatives called Operation Midnight Climax use prostitutes to lure clients and dose them with LSD behind one-way mirrors while CIA men observed. The project's architect, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, and other officials used shell companies and academic grants to hide the trail. In 1973, aware that investigations might catch up, the CIA's director ordered the destruction of most MK-Ultra records. The paper trail vanished. Survivors and families were left to piece together stories from memory and subpoenaed fragments. For Olson's family, the truth arrived slowly and cruelly. In 1975, the government paid a settlement and acknowledged giving him LSD without consent. In 1994, his body was exhumed. A subsequent forensic review found skull fractures and injuries inconsistent with a simple fall. Evidence that persuaded many he had been pushed. No one was ever convicted. The wider scandal, however, proved undeniable. A democratic state had authorized covert experiments on its own citizens, rationalized by existential fear of enemy interrogation techniques, but executed in secrecy and shame. The horror of MK-Ultra rests in its ordinariness. It was not monsters in masks. It was technicians in lab coats, intelligence officers carrying briefcases, academics taking grants, people who stitched together a program that treated human beings as expendable instruments of national security. The conspiracy was not a single villainous cabal, but a bureaucracy willing to shroud its methods in secrecy, to launder funding through intermediaries, to destroy records when exposure loomed. The result was scattered victims, ruined minds, admissions denied for years, experiments remembered only as nightmares. Today, Frank Olson's fall is a hinge in that dark story. His name is spoken in investigations and memoirs, an emblem of how confidence in institutions can be betrayed. The documents that remain are patchwork. What we know is enough to confirm a grim truth. The Cold War turned anxiety into experiments on human consciousness, and for many, the consequences were lifelong. The strangest terror is not the drug itself, but the realization that the state, the very entity charged with protecting its citizens, once chose secrecy and control over consent and care. That choice, and the men and women who suffered because of it, is the real legacy of MK-Ultra's quiet, bureaucratic horror.